Hello, welcome. Hello. He covered this, but I'm Kenneth Love. You can find me on pretty much anything as Kenneth Love. It's great having a fairly unique name. So we're going to talk about teaching in this. As mentioned, I worked at Treehouse, where we did video learning, so I would make videos that would teach people Python or Django or whatever. I've also done technical editing on some books. I've done a video series on my own, all sorts of things like this. All of that is to say that I'm 100% self-taught at programming and at teaching. I made it up as I went along, and it worked out. So I'll tell you things so you don't have to make up as much as I did, ideally. Also, a lot of this talk involves things about inclusivity, sensitivity, diversity. If you don't like those things, I'm sorry, there are exits. Also, hello, you're all teachers too. So maybe you're a mentor, maybe you're a tutor, maybe you're a senior dev, maybe you're a manager. Maybe you just like writing things on the internet. All these things are ways to be teachers, right? You lead meetups. So you're all teachers just like I am, just like anyone else you think of as a teacher is. So you get tools to use. This whole talk has basically two parts to it. So the first part is tools, tips, tricks for helping people learn and remember things. It doesn't go into pedagogy or like the science of teaching stuff, because, well, I don't know that. And also, lots of times it seems the implementation is way more important than the specific things you said or the specific way you set something up. So let's look at some tools, things to help people remember the things that you're teaching them. So one of the first ones, and it's a pretty common one, is a coding challenge. So this is something where you give somebody a bit of code and a problem. They have to write more code to solve that problem. Or maybe they get no code and they have to write all the code themselves. So these are really great. They help people cement things. It helps them write code. The only way to learn to code is to write code. You can't just read a book and learn to code. You have to write the code yourself. So this is a really great thing. One of the problems, though, is lots of times it's really challenging for students because they're trying to figure out what you meant for them to do. The instructions are hard to get right. So this is a thing where you may find yourself needing to iterate on your code challenges a lot as students come to you with, oh, but I thought you wanted me to make a list, but really you want a tuple. Okay, no, so now I know that. I understand that. So, code challenges. If you can't do code challenges, lots of times those are hard if you don't have a platform that supports them. You can just give people repos with issues. So here's a GitHub repo, clone it, fix the problems, right? All these tests fail, make them not fail anymore. And that's a great way for them to get more into open source or more into a real-world work style of learning to code. But it's also a cool thing because you can do this and then do, say, a live stream, and they can code along with you, seeing the same code, dealing with the same issues, making pull requests, helping you out, whatever you want them to do. Similar to all of this is story problems. How many of you remember having math class and having to figure out, like, how many watermelons Juan had if he gave away 15 of his 177 that he originally bought for some reason? So those are terrible, but you can come up with really good story problems. And the good thing about story problems is it can help people cement programming in their life because you can relate to issues they've had to deal with at work. Kojo talked earlier about having to deal with spreadsheets and Excel. If people are having to deal with that, his talk, and if you have story problems that go along with working with spreadsheets, that can really help to cement using a CSV module or the OpenPyXL thing. Another great one, especially for explaining an idea to people, is using motion. So that's the idea of having something that's animated and helps to explain a concept, often in a more abstract way. One great thing about this is it can help you overcome social norms and idioms. I had a coworker at Treehouse who he was a Java teacher. He did 2 Java courses in a text editor, not IDE, so they had to type everything out. When he finally got them to the point where they were ready for IDEs and to install them and set up the environment, he apologized and said that they probably wanted to dunk him in a dunk tank, and people from many other parts of the world wrote in, "What's a dunk tank?" So, had he illustrated a dunk tank, they would have known what it was. Also, it's an easy I hate using that word there, but it's an easy way for representation. If you, like me, are a white male, you can use motion to bring in people of other ethnicities, nationalities, all sorts of other people, and have them represented in your product, in your educational materials, so that people feel like they're part of your education. I do have a sample of motion, and let's see if it works.
A variable can be a bunch of characters, letters, numbers, symbols, spaces, all grouped together inside of quote marks. We call this a string. Or it could be a number like 3, or 2.5, or -100. We call these integers, or floats, depending on whether or not they have a decimal point in them. Or they could be several other types that we're not going to get to in this course. We assign variables using a single equals sign. Whatever name is on the left side gets pointed to the value on the right. We could put our lunch into the variable lunch by saying lunch equals, quote mark, turkey sandwich, close quotes.
I apologize for
This
the
would make
quotes.
a variable named lunch that has a string value of turkey sandwich.
So you may not have a motion department or people who do motion that could build this for you in, say, After Effects or whatever, but all of that can be achieved in Keynote or PowerPoint. And you can find places online where you can purchase pre-built templates for things like this as well. So you can add these, little segues in without having to spend a lot of time building them yourself, which is really handy. So, of course, after you teach somebody something, you should give them something to take home. So some notes, some documentation. Jupyter Notebooks are amazing for this if you're dealing with data science things or standard Python things. Jupyter Notebooks are a little hard for, say, like Django, but they'll work for a lot of other cases. And you can, of course, always give them project files so they can write the code on their own computer and see how everything works. But remember with all of this that they're still student drivers. They're just learning. So show and tell them what you want them to do at first, even with the project files or the readmes, the things they take home. Be sure and give them lots of documentation and encourage them to use documentation. Use it yourself so that they see you using it, whether that's, hey, I went to this URL and looked up the thing, or you're doing a video where they can actually watch you go and look up the thing. And then, of course, again, starter files. And when you're grading their projects, when you're dealing with their code challenges and their things they've handed in, their assignments, you're just looking for them to be better than they were before. So you're not trying to make them be perfect, right? You just want them to be a step better than they were before they started the code challenge. And a big part of this is testing the output way more than you test what they did in there. So unless it's super important, don't worry about what they wrote inside the function. Just worry about what the function gives back. So long as it gives back the string or the object that you wanted, you're cool. Doesn't really matter what they did inside of there. All right, that was the easy part. Let's do the hard part now, because you're all ready, right? So let's talk about getting more people to listen to you and for them to keep listening to you and paying attention to what you said when you said something. So, reassurances. Learning is really, really hard. I read a blog post a while back that was talking about deep work. This is a thing we're all familiar with as programmers. You get in that zone, right? You get in the flow, your head's down, everything's flowing, code is just coming out of your fingers, and then someone calls you to a meeting, and it's all gone, poof. Well, learning's the exact same way. You have to get into the mindset to learn things, and then you have to stay in there to learn those things, especially complex, deep things like programming. So reassure them that they're not going to be successful every single time they sit down to a lesson. It's okay. Things are hard to learn, and that you had to learn these things too. It took a long time to learn to program, right? Like, none of us learned it in 2 days. We all spent, a long, long time learning how to program. Also, encourage them to take breaks. It's really great if you're struggling with a problem to go take a walk, to go have a snack, to go take a nap. It works the same for learning. You have a really hard time learning how to write decorators, which I still can't do without looking them up. Read the thing, go take a walk around the block, come back, read it again, see if it makes more sense. And, get them to take breaks. I've had lots of students that are like, yeah, I sat down and watched for 12 hours, and then I got lost. Yeah, you watched for 12 hours. Do something else. Also, make mistakes in front of your students. Do things wrong. This shows them that you are human. Teachers often get elevated to this not quite human status because you know everything. You're the one imparting knowledge to us. So make the mistakes, screw up, and then, oh yeah, they're just another person. That's fine. They don't know what they're doing. Every single time they make typos, they do things the wrong way. This also has a really sneaky hidden benefit of you get to show them how to read stack traces and logs and errors and debug a problem and find that line that's wrong. And that's a really scary thing for beginners. The first time they get like a type error, they panic. So if you can show them, hey, look, type errors aren't that big of a deal. It says right here, it's line 15, this one thing. I used a list and I should have used a dictionary. I'll fix it. So, since I'm here teaching you, I'll talk about a mistake I made. I talked about encouraging breaks, right? Having people go and take breaks. I often tell people, go get a snack, go get something to eat, because calories are really good for your brain. It makes you remember things a little bit better. And I had somebody come across that, and they messaged me with, how dare you encourage American-style overeating? I don't know if I am. Maybe I am. I don't know. But, it's a thing. So have healthy snacks instead. Biggest issue here is inclusion, obviously. Anywhere you can, use ambiguous or non-gendered names that could come from multiple different ethnicities or nationalities or regions of the world, names that could belong to all kinds of different people. Don't rely on idioms. Again, we already talked about that, but I'll bring that up again. For any of you who are speaking or teaching a non-native tongued group, so they don't speak the same language you do, slow down. I'm guilty of that. I've probably been going too fast already. But yeah, slow down. As far as the names and stuff go, there's a wonderful series of posts that people have made that's like things programmers believe about dates and time and things like that. There's one of those that's about names. I highly encourage you to go read that. And that one's really good because if you can work that in, you can help them avoid the pitfalls that all the programmers who believed those things about names fell into. So, double thing. As far as the inclusion goes, it actually does, it really matters. A lot of people don't feel that it does, but I did the thing I didn't think was important at all. In one of my videos, we're taking the I'm a Lumberjack song, from the Monty Python thing, and he's okay, so we have a name comes in and a pronoun, and we do he's okay, she's okay, and we do they are okay. And then I get a message from a student. I'll give you a moment to read it. So yeah, it's a really great thing to keep in there. The more you can include other people, the better. So most of this talk, I try to be extremely non-judgmental about things. We're all going to make all these mistakes. We're all going to have gendered words or dunk tanks. This next one, though, I have to be very judgmental. You guys, there's a great benefit to being filmed a lot. You want to know what that is? Here's the great benefit to being filmed. Reaction GIFs of yourself. So, embrace the YALL. YALL is a wonderful word. YALL is amazing. And y'all are amazing. But if you don't like y'all, you can do folks, everyone. Friends and enemies is a great one. The whole crowd is confused for a while. Students, team, little monsters, whatever. Doesn't really matter. I have to admit, the embrace the y'all comes from my friend Lacey. So if you don't know Lacey Williams-Central, she's amazing. Yes. But she made me go back to using y'all, and it's so good. All right, so more on the inclusion. Moms get things done. We've so long had the examples of it's so easy, my mom can do it, or my grandma can do it, or whatever. Moms get a lot of shit done. So don't use that example. I have another one. I always bring up on this one, and it's a weird one, but I feel like it's a good thing to bring up. We often assume that boys are going to be good at technology, which has a whole gender baggage on its own, but there are lots of families where they haven't had a lot of technology, and maybe the son or the nephew is the first one to go into technology at all, and they have this assumption that they should be good simply because they're male. So that puts a whole other set of weight and pressure on people. So just, if we can not assume that it's a gender thing, not the words you're thinking of. Don't say easy, don't say just, don't say simple, don't say basic, don't say obviously, any of those kinds of words, right? Because that's all completely relative. Easy is like the most relative word in the world. because it's easy for me because I've done it 15 times. It's really hard for you because you've never heard of it before. Jargon. If you ever describe anything as a pattern, a paradigm, or an algorithm, you better follow that up with an explanation. And a very long explanation at that. You can't assume that anybody knows what these things are. You can't assume they even know what pattern or algorithm is, much less what that particular pattern or algorithm is. This works the same with acronyms. Sorry, we have a million acronyms in the tech world. Hi, Java devs. Break those down as much as possible because they're just everywhere. Also, don't tech shame. If someone's coming to you to learn Python, there's a good chance they did Java or C or C# or JavaScript or something like that before. They don't want to hear you say that Java is a horrible language or that PHP is trash. Also, just speaking to the Python people, explicit is better than implicit, and yet we rail on, what is it, public static void? That's very explicit, isn't it? Okay, but I have to admit, I gave the entire thing away with my title. The only thing you really have to know for teaching is empathy. You have to be able to put yourself into the shoes and the mind space of your students. If you can figure out why they went down the path they went down when they got that code challenge wrong or that quiz wrong, you can make that code challenge or that quiz better. You can teach them, and they will move on to the next place in your learning and do so much better because you are able to connect with them and work through their problems. And it doesn't have to be an individual, just them in the general sense. So if all I know is for loops and variables, how do I make a hangman game? Probably don't, but if that's all I knew, how do I do that? So if you can get to that point, forget all the other things you know. You don't know ifs and you don't know functions, but how would you build this thing? Then you can teach way, way better because it's all about limiting those options and questions. So I want to thank the people who made my slide template, Treehouse for that video, and O'Reilly for giving me time off to be here. And that's my talk. If you would like to teach, there are millions of places to go teach online and in person. You should go do it because teaching is fun, and we will all make the world better if we teach more people. So thank you.